Does it get easier every time you're asked to tell your story, or is it always a challenge? Does it take something out of you?
It's always a challenge. It never gets easier. I promised myself to go through some of these difficult parts without becoming emotional, but I'm never able to accomplish it. It always gets to me. It's heartbreaking.
So I'm going to, of course, take you there again. And in advance, I thank you for it.
I understand.
So when you first worked in Schindler's factory, how old were you?
I was 13. I was about, I turned 14 later that year in Schindler's company. And before that, I had experienced 2 years of the ghetto and several months of the concentration camp called Plaszow. And so it was a long trip before I got to Schindler's company.
Is Plaszow?
Plaszow.
What was Plaszow like?
Plaszow was like the end of the world. It was nothing like anything I've seen before. When I came to Plaszow, I came from the ghetto. It was like going from the frying pan into the fire. It was so much worse. The camp was very unfamiliar, just barracks and dogs barking and people yelling. It was just a scary place. And, at the time, I thought to myself that from there I wasn't going to go anywhere.
You thought you'd die
That
there?
would be my last stop,
Were you hurt in Plaszow?
Was I hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, many times. Yeah, I was beaten. I was whipped. I was, at one point, a whole group of us were meted out to 25 lashes, and I ended up to be one of them. So, that's pretty sad. I was a little boy being whipped by a grown man.
When you were called to Schindler's factory, I understand that you actually weren't called. Is that right?
Well, my experiences, my survival was just a series of fortunate events. And so my father and my brother were already in Schindler's subcamp. And my father had, everyone who worked in Schindler's company, who knew Schindler, probably thought they had a special relationship with the man, because this kind of person he was. But in my father's case, I think there was really a true connection because he was one of the first Jewish workers that Schindler hired. My father asked him to add the two of us to the list. So I was on the list, and my mother was on the list, and we were going to be transferred. Except, in my case, my name was crossed off the list at some point, and it was assumed that, I was not going to go, that my mother was going to leave, and I was going to be left alone in this concentration camp.
So what did you do as a 12-year-old boy or something, right?
Yeah, I was 13 by then, really. I approached the man who was in charge, huge, monstrous-looking guy, and told him who I was and that my name was on the list and somebody had crossed my name off. Started to tell him about my family, about my mother who's on the list and she's in this group. And I was talking to this man who didn't think I was human. But something happened, looked at me, and he just grunted, and pointed to this group. And so I jumped in. And
what kind of a risk did you take really standing up to that guard, that person?
It was a do or die, really. He could have decided that to shoot me.
And had you seen this man shoot other people?
Oh, yeah. See, this man was one of those people who roamed the ranks every morning, shooting people, beating people up. And it was just on a daily basis. Every morning you could hear shots. So when I was transferred from this camp to Schindler's company, which was considerably better, I was a lathe operator. Mm-hmm. I was a machinist.
And you went on to teach industrial arts in your life after.
I ended up teaching the subject that I worked at in Schindler's company.
You said Schindler would be a person that to sit in front of, everyone felt they had a personal connection. What was it about him?
A look in his eye, you could tell the difference. When you looked at a Nazi, there was nothing behind the eyes. It's just blank. There was no soul behind the eyes. When you looked at when Schindler spoke to us, he looked us in the eye. He spoke to us in complete sentences. He would stop and talk to somebody like me, who used to stand on a box because I was too short to reach the controls on the machine, ask me how I was doing, and wait for an answer, and look me right in the eye. You could see a little twinkle in his eye that was different from anybody else that I met before that.
In all those years then, really in some formative years of your childhood, beyond your family and other people who were Jewish, was he the first person to actually see you as a human being that wasn't?
That's true. That is absolutely true. He was just one of the most unusual human beings.
What are your strongest memories of being in Schindler's factory?
I had really mixed emotions about Schindler. I was always skeptical about whether he would be able to accomplish the things. When I heard rumors of what he was going to do, I always thought, well, when the push came to shove, actually he's German, so he probably would lean to that side. But he never did. I was always wrong about that.
Why do you think he did this?
He thought he needed to do the right thing.
What's the magnitude of that for someone like you, whose family survived because he did the right thing?
It's enormous. When the factory stopped production, my father and my brother and I were on the list to leave, and my mother was on the list to stay. And when Schindler came to see who was leaving, as he was standing there, I tried to get his attention, to let him know that we were being sent away. Because I was little, I used to line up in the back row. So I started moving out of my row, and when I did that, a guard saw me and hit me with his rifle butt. But I had a thermos bottle in my hand. Anyway, he broke the bottle, he made a big crash, and then Schindler looked, and so I called out to him and told him my father, my brother, and I are being sent away. He ordered us out of that group immediately. At that point, he saved our lives directly. More than half of those people did not survive the war.
Did you see him after the war, Schindler, ever?
Mm-hmm. Yes. 20 years later, in 1965, he came to L.A. I was a grown man, almost as tall as he was. I was a married man. My wife was with me, and we went to the airport to greet him. When it was my turn, I thought, I'm a nice guy, and I thought, well, I should introduce myself so that I would not embarrass him. But he interrupted me. He said, I know who you are. You're a little Leyson.
Wow.
Yeah. 20 years later.
You were still a person.
Yep. Absolutely.
I hate that I have to ask you this, but I do, because it happened this week. Ernst Zundel, who was a Holocaust denier, was released from prison on Monday. And I wonder, when you see that, knowing that people like him are out there denying your life, how do you make sense of the fact that he is free to speak?
Yeah, he's free to speak, and I have my theory about these people. There are two kinds of people who deny the Holocaust. There are those who are simply ignorant. They just don't know. And there are those people who know very well, who write books and make speeches and make a living from it. Those are the people that are the most vicious ones. They're the ones that know better and do this. And those people are really criminals. And I do not speak to people who deny the Holocaust. I have nothing to say to them.
Lastly, Leon, what do you think the lesson of your life is?
Actually, I'm the luckiest human being on this planet. That's just really what my life was like. I was the most fortunate person there is. It couldn't possibly have been better for me.
You must have no tolerance for people that complain about things like, woe is me, I worked a 10-hour day.
Yes, that's true.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.